Quiet transparency is the ability to be open and authentic about what matters without being overly self-promoting. It starts from being quiet and listening, creating calm, listening for the future. This skill is deeply rooted in genuine humility, and it does not mix well with fame, celebrity, or acclaim. Leaders shouldn't advertise themselves. They should be self-effacing, not self-promoting. Leaders who advertise themselves and take credit for their own performances will become targets. So there's an inherent dilemma in this skill. Leaders need to be known in order to lead. So how do you become known to lead without advertising yourself? And that's the dilemma. Leaders will have to deal with some elements of fame, but they should resist the urge to be stars. Johansson suggests that the age of the rock star leader is over. The best leaders are content to lead while others get the attention. This skill presents an especially difficult balance for heads of school whose role is to be visible and in front. Drew Brees, on recently surpassing Johnny Unitas' record of 47 consecutive games with a touchdown pass, said what meant the most to him about breaking the record is, quote, "It's a team record. It's not an individual record. So many people were responsible for this on our team." Drew Brees is a perfect example of quiet transparency, the amount of humility he shows every time the spotlight shines on him. Ultimately, then, this skill is not about totally avoiding the spotlight. Rather, it's about what drives and motivates a leader at their core. Is it for personal glory, or is it for the mission of the school? Like football, leadership in our schools is a team effort. We all stand on the shoulders of our colleagues, so leadership should be a collaborative effort. Transparency is rooted in the maker instinct. People are naturally curious about how things are made. Where did the ingredients come from? What were the standards of safety? How green were the factories? Who were the workers, and how were they treated? Transparency, though, often won't be as easy or even as desirable as it sounds in the abstract. Leaders will increasingly have to be open about almost everything they do, communicate why they are doing what they're doing, communicate why it matters to them and their school. Whether we like it or not, the future will be a world of greatly increased transparency, whether of a leader's own making or whether forced by outside actors. Just ask Mitt Romney about increased transparency after this video was released. A primary driver of increased transparency is ubiquitous computing. Over the next decade, computing will become truly ubiquitous. Many things that are currently invisible now will become visible through a vast array of cheap measuring devices. And with social media, records of bad behavior will be recorded and preserved. There's also a dilemma of transparency. Few things are absolutely transparent in a way that everyone will agree upon. So while it is good news that in the future we will have increase in more transparency, the bad news is we may not know or be able to process what that transparency reveals. Transparency doesn't necessarily equal accuracy. And the evaluator of transparency usually gets to decide and define what transparency means, not the person or the organization being assessed. It requires trust on the part of the evaluator and authenticity on the part of the leader. Leadership authenticity inspires credibility and trust. Authenticity is especially important to us in school since we deal in transformations, not products. School leaders must be open and transparent with both internal and external constituencies. They must look for opportunities to engage their communities early on in the decision-making processes. And there are many good examples of this occurring in our schools, from town hall meetings to headmaster blogs, where heads address the important issues that are facing their schools. A concept that naturally flows from quiet transparency is open source thinking. Johansson forecasts a future that moves away from more closed toward more open thinking and systems. The premise is, if you give ideas away, you'll get even better ideas back in return. And when you combine open source thinking with ubiquitous computing, there are powerful new opportunities to collaborate, interact, and exchange ideas. And we're seeing many examples of open source thinking in education already, from collaborative textbooks to Khan Academy to Harvard and MIT free courses online, the online school for girls. And these are just a few examples among many. And there's a real opportunity for us as schools and as an association to capitalize on this trend. A final element of this skill is vulnerability. Personal vulnerability opens the door to being real, genuine, and human with others. Most leaders wear protective masks that they don't remove easily. They're taught to hide their fears and their frustrations. Quiet leaders are human and humble, yet they have great strength. They are vulnerable, yet self-confident. So in summary, do the right thing and be transparent, but don't be self-promotional. Be willing to tell others what you are doing and why, but only when they ask. Humble strength will be the best leadership profile for the future. Sometimes leaders will not get credit for the futures they make, but for the truly great leaders, that's okay with them.